What's up everybody and welcome to another edition of AGR's Pop Culture Reviews. Now when I say I take fan feedback seriously, I really mean it. So this week it's going to be all about spiders, or spider-like beings in the Marvel Universe. In any event, we're going to take it back a little bit old school and give the lady spiders a little bit of love. Now, Spider-Woman has had a very interesting life cycle in the Marvel Universe. There have been retcons, reimaginings, and her story is probably one of the most convoluted of any of the Marvel characters. Now, Jessica Drew was the original Spider-Woman, but her reason for being is actually pretty interesting. It wasn't necessarily because people were clamoring for a female counterpart to Spider-Man, as it was for a trademark. You see, Marvel realized that the only way they could retain the rights to the word Spider-Woman was to create an actual character. Now, similar to Peter Parker, Jessica Drew was the result of an experimental accident, and she was endowed with all the powers of Spider-Man, but her powers differ slightly. She has bioelectric stingers and powerful pheromones. One of the more interesting aspects of this character during her 50-issue run, she was linked to several organizations including Hydra, S.H.I.E.L.D., and the Avengers. So today we're going to be reviewing Diamond Select Toys' version of Spider-Woman. Let's take a closer look. Now, you guys all know that I love the MCU, and being able to see in flesh, on screen, my favorite Marvel characters has been awesome. But there is something to be said about the comic book versions, and when I pulled this thing out of the box, I immediately fell in love with it. The head sculpt is amazing, straight out of the comics, and not only that, the old school comics, which I really love. The sculpt on the hair is particularly awesome, and I love those big whited out eyes. This is just a great head sculpt and a perfect representation of what we see in the comic book. The other downside to the MCU, and I'm not trying to shit on them or anything like that, but you know, they can't get away with these flashy costumes like they did in the old school comics. And this is why I love the fact that she has that traditional red suit. I also love the outlining of the yellow and the black. It just looks really great. It contrasts very well, and there's also some very interesting shading. The cool thing about it is you actually see some of her abilities. Mostly those electric bio stingers, which look really great, and you also see the webbing where her armpits are, which looks awesome just underneath her arm, and they are clear, so it looks good. The art direction and overall style of this piece is what really sells it, especially as it relates to her bioelectric stingers. Now, what they did here is pretty dynamic in terms of the pose, and the sculpt in the actual bolts look really well done. They're also a little bit lighter color than the actual yellow in the costume, which differentiates it just a little bit, but overall, it's done very well, and it gives it a nice sense of 3-dimension. It's really cool, guys. The other really impressive aspect of this piece is definitely in the stance. Now, the legs look great here. They are muscular without being too exaggerated, but most importantly is the fact that they put her in a pose where she looks like she was creeping around, got discovered by somebody, and was about to light them up with her electric bolts. The color palette here is again fantastic, shading is great. I also love the color contrast between her boots and the actual costume. It's just a really well done thing. I absolutely love the more flamboyant colors here, and they look fantastic with the overall motif. Now, just like similar statues, this is definitely one that you're going to want to mirror because the reverse side is equally beautiful. And we can begin with the hair sculpt. Now, just take a look at that, guys. It is absolutely intricate. The strands look great. It's just a fantastic sculpt, and I really love what they did here. That black really contrasts very well with the rest of the suit. Not to mention that they did a great job in her, obviously, derriere section. It's muscular without being over exaggerated. It also looks really well, and the fact that she's crouching really gives it this nice dynamic. So definitely mirror this one, guys. And finally, perhaps the coolest thing for me personally is definitely the base. Now, this thing is probably one of the more unique bases that I've ever seen, and I've seen a lot of them. The cool thing is that it's completely clear, so it looks like she's almost stepping on nothing, which is awesome. I definitely love the spider symbol. It's equal to what you see on the chest. It's also very intricate, and those nice web strands really give it this nice sense of detail. It also has a really small footprint relative to the statue, and again, because it's clear, if you put an LED under it, it's going to look really nice in a display case when you light it up. Guys, this one was an easy one for me. There are so many reasons to fall in love with this piece. The retro styling, the color palette, the incredible detail, but most importantly, the price point. It is relatively cheap, and that is one of the most awesome aspects for everything that you get with this. And if you're a Spider-Man fan, especially if you're a Spider-Woman fan, you need to jump on this. Now, before I go, I just want to thank the folks over at Think Geek for sending this wonderful piece over for a review. I also want to remind you to stay tuned for the next review, as I'm going to be doing Mondo's version of Spider-Gwen, and you don't want to miss out on that. Alright everybody, so that's my official review on Diamond Select Toys' version of Spider-Woman. As always, I thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next AGR's Pop Culture Reviews.